Ayanda, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to be here. I think we've been talking with everyone that's behind the scenes for the last 45 minutes. Everyone is it's such a vibe here,
it's
guys.
Such a vibe. The energy is great.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's December.
December. I'm ready. I am so ready.
Yeah. I'm so excited to have you back. When we first recorded our first podcast, I was actually thinking about this. It was just before the pandemic hit.
Yes.
It was about a month or two just before the pandemic hit. And I remember you and I were chatting because we were meant to go to the Women in Tech conference.
I know.
We had just met via the podcast.
Yes.
And we were going to go. And then the pandemic hit. And it was when people were still unsure what was going on before lockdowns. We were like, are you going? Are you going?
I remember. It was such a stressful time because I had booked accommodation. We had booked flights. And then the ticket. And the thing is, you could get reimbursed for other things, but not the ticket. Because they were like, the Women in Tech ticket. They're like, sorry.
The ticket is a ticket.
It's a ticket, so it was such a stressful time because we didn't know what was happening. And we didn't know how long we're gonna be in this pandemic, because there are still hopes of maybe we can go there. I think it was in September. I never went.
It was cancelled, but it's interesting because that was that's how we met.
Yeah.
And now it's more than a year later and we're back again on the podcast.
I am so excited, and I love that it's a Nedbank driven initiative, because it's so wild because we're both in tech startups now. Yes. And my first time I opened a business account was a Nedbank account, and as a student. And I once shared this story on your podcast where I said that we had a drive sharing app, which is an Uber, I guess, in varsity, because I was at Rhodes. There were no transportation. I thought, why not get students to use their cars and share that with other people? And we needed to open a business account, and everyone wanted so much money. I was just like, we are students. I got an investment from my dad, which was not a lot. Everyone had to put together some money.
We're pulling
in money, and then we had to open a business account. And then, to be honest, at that stage, besides all the cool benefits, it went down to money.
Yes. Can I afford?
Which bank can I afford? And Nedbank was that as a student, and we opened a business account under that. And that since then, it's been sort of my business account.
Yeah, it's always nice when life comes back full circle. It's that was your start. So you were getting into the tech space, and Nedbank helped you kick off that journey, and now you're the CEO of another tech startup. And you're making moves. You're doing the most.
Thank you so much. Trying. And also you. I've been seeing your journey. It's been so awesome. I think we dreamed so much years ago. Yeah. And I think someone who's in the podcast space, you've sort of paved the way for a lot of us. And made it I think you were the first South African female podcast that I knew about. And then since then, I've just been exposed to me.
I don't know how to react.
and I think when you're behind the scenes, you realize how much work goes into it. And I've been so humble.
Yeah, because you're a podcaster now, too.
Yeah. And so it's my goodness. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it's so fulfilling.
It is so fulfilling.
It's I'm just always humbled at how everyone learns, about this, And I once had an episode on personal finances. And we spoke about personal finances, which was so awesome. Yeah. And so it's been a journey.
Okay, so speaking about personal finances, for today's conversation, we want to talk about the fact that it is December. And I guess before we get into the money side of things, is there a goal that you had set maybe at the beginning of the year, or that as time went by that you want to celebrate at the end of the year? Now in December, is there any goals you can share with us?
Yeah. So I know I was thinking that what were my goals beginning of the year? And I was hoping it was something tangible, right? That I want to get this when I've made this much. And I think for me, one of the key things I've been trying to do is to set up my emergency fund, as well as have a little bit of financial freedom. Yeah. And I know that sounds like I haven't gotten to a point where I have full financial freedom. But I think a lot of the things that I've hoped for and I prayed for was I want to have more multiple of streams of income. And that was part of me reaching those goals. That will also lead to that financial freedom. That will lead to me setting up a proper emergency fund and diversifying my income stream. So a lot of my goals was linked to how can I build wealth?
Yes.
How can I,
And you were chatting about sustainable wealth, not just
sustainable wealth. Exactly.
Riches,
sustainable wealth. How can I build that? And that was sort of my mentality. I put down the things I want to do. I put down the things I want to work on, and I planned that. I'm this is sort of my vision board for this year. what I do, I plan with tables. So I don't have nice pictures. It's just a table. And I was like, this is what I want to achieve this year. And for me, having an emergency fund, because the pandemic taught us that.
Yes.
And also having that little bit of financial freedom. So I haven't really found a tangible item I want to celebrate with.
Yes.
What we were talking about earlier on, I love celebrating on people. So when I celebrate, I do things for my family.
Yeah.
Last year it was my aunt's 50th. So I wanted to do something amazing for her. Yeah. So it's for me, I think it's going to end up being that. But my goals were really linked to just having that bit of financial freedom and setting up things I've always wanted to have in place. And I was looking back and saying, wow, like things really did take place that way, because I was also very intentional, you know. And I think people sit there and say, I get asked a lot because I'm a huge advocate for having my multiple streams of income. People sit there like, I work a 9 to 5, which is demanding, I understand, and how do I then diversify my income stream? And you know, you need to also be very active. You can't be passive and hope things to fall in your lap. You have to be out.
You have to work at it.
You have to work at that. And if there are no opportunities, create them. Open those opportunities, make them work, and then that's when you can start seeing that happen. And that's what I did also. You know, I was very intentional about achieving those goals. And sometimes you make these grand goals, financial goals, and we think somehow the money is going to fall in our laps, and we have to be active in like making that happen.
What as you're speaking, you know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of the fact that, like you're saying that, you know, financial freedom, emergency savings, all these things. I think also something that we can think about is not just celebrating that you've reached a certain number, but also just celebrating the fact that you've made progress towards the goal.
Yes.
You know, you may not necessarily have reached that one big ultimate goal that you wanted, but we need to celebrate the steps in between.
Oh, yes.
The progress towards the goal.
Oh, yes. I love that. Being present and celebrating every milestone. Because sometimes you might, you know, we set very unrealistic goals.
Yeah.
That's very important. And sometimes you get there and you're like, oh, I wanted to make this much, or I've saved up this much. And then when you look back, you're like, I haven't. But then you forget that you actually... You've
done a lot.
You've done a lot. You've done more than what you would have done in 6 months before. And I think it's also important to be present. It's important to celebrate. It's important to say, wow, I'm proud of myself.
Yes.
Okay, now let's try get there. And then set up another plan, because you haven't fully gotten there. And I think that's so important. Now, that's how I treat myself. I try to be kind to myself.
Yes, be kind.
Because when I am critical, I remember I said something on Twitter. I'm like, if you could write an apology letter to yourself, what would you say? And I said, for me, I would basically apologize for being critical. And I think
love that.
I think we can be so critical and be so disappointed, but I think it's so important to celebrate, to be kind to yourself, and to say that, was I being realistic or was I not being realistic? If you weren't being realistic, then that's where you sit down and say, what are my saving goals for the new year, you know, or the next 6 months, you know? And it doesn't stop now because it's September. I mean, like, but you still have 3 more months or 4 more months to go until the year ends. And then being kind to yourself and saying, let's try this again. So,
and sometimes even if maybe your dreams are not necessarily like unrealistic, there's a lot in life that is out of our control. And again, the pandemic has obviously taught us that it's not always your fault. You know, understand, it's being kind to yourself, for me, just reminds me that understand that you only have control over so much in your life. You know what I mean? Let go of the things that you can't control, focus on what you can control. Yeah, that's a big lesson that I've personally learned as well. And it just, you saying be kind to yourself reminds me of that. Let go of what you can't control, focus on what you can control.
Exactly.
Okay, that was beautiful. And but yeah, just I also want to touch on the apology letter. I've never thought of that. That's brilliant.
I actually saw it. Someone, I don't know what I was, either I read something. And I sat down like, what would I apologize for? And I was just like, to myself. And I was just like, oh my goodness, it's been critical and being so like hard on myself, when sometimes you need to stop and be kind. I can be kind to the next person, but I can't be kind to myself.
You can't give that kindness
like,
to yourself.
I'm the type of person, hi, I'm Ayanda, what's your name? You know, how are you doing? You know, people are always like caught off guard when I ask, because they're not used to being asked, how are you doing? And that's who I am. I'm like, I try, just like, you never know what someone's going through, but I can't do that for myself. I'm like, How wild is that?
It is wild.
How wild
We
is
extend
that?
so much grace and kindness to others, but not necessarily to ourselves. It's hard to do it for yourself.
Exactly. So that's where it came from, and I put it on everyone. A lot of women were saying the same thing. It's like exactly that, and it's so wild that we think like that. And I think it goes through with a lot of things with our personal finances. You're like, I'm not where I need to be. I didn't provide the way I wanted. I didn't support my family the way I should have supported them, and and you forget.
I made the wrong choice.
I made the wrong choice, and you forget that you've done so much with whatever you could at that point, So,
geez, I didn't think we were going to get so deep so early on in the conversation. No, that's absolutely beautiful. Okay, so and I want to talk a bit about December, and I think it's a great segue because it leads nicely from what you're talking about, being kind to yourself. It's December now, and in December we see a lot of people doing the most. People are living lavishly, social media, everybody is just doing a lot. Everyone is showing off, everybody's buying gifts for people. And there's just a lot going on, right? But also we often go home as well around this December period to our family. And there's also that family dynamic that you also navigate as like a young person, where there's also family expectations where your family might expect stuff from you financially or even emotionally, and it's stressful. This is a very stressful period, financially, emotionally, mentally. It's a very stressful period, right? How do you navigate this time of year while still trying to live within your means?
Yeah.
And take care of your mental health too.
Yeah.
But also while still, if you want to celebrate yourself.
Yeah.